One of my favorite things in the world to do is watch Friends. I know it's been off for years and years. It's not even around, but I still find myself binge watching old episodes. And I was thinking about this today and thinking, it's the predictability of the friends in the circle, right? You have Chandler with his quirkiness, Monica with her type A of just everything has to be so neat and tidy and organized. It's Phoebe's ability to make you laugh at her silly songs. Ross always comes in with those smart comments, and Joey and him and his food, like it is just so hilarious. And of course, Rachel, she just brings everybody together, and it's just such this beautiful, cohesive team of people. And it's why I wanted to come on and share with you today that I have an opportunity for you to find your friends in the content creation space. So if you are thinking about creating your first or your next digital course, I don't want you to miss this opportunity because Amy Porterfield just opened the doors for registration for her Course Confident Bootcamp. And I'm actually offering a special bonus for anyone that registers for the Course Confident Bootcamp through my special link. So I want you to go to crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp to register. That's crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp. And what you're going to find when you get there is I have this special bonus private podcast series. It's called Money Mindset for Creators. So I want you to go register for Amy's bootcamp, download the podcast, and immediately start listening to it, because what this training is set up to do is to help you get your mind right about monetizing your content, making money so that you can fuel your content creation dreams. So go to crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp to register for Course Confident. And I cannot wait for you to find your friends and find the people that will be there for you. Do you see what I did there? Yeah, nice little friends segue connection. Go to crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp. And I cannot wait to see you inside. Okay, let's get into today's episode. I'm so grateful whenever I have a really good idea. And I say that pretty humbly, simply because I don't always have great ideas. Let me just put that out there. So whenever the inspiration strikes and something happens, I like to acknowledge, let's acknowledge more whenever we have a great idea, instead of just secretly patting ourselves on the back and saying, man, that was really good. Why don't we share it more whenever we've had a good idea? And I can say that here because I don't think I've ever actually said those words back to back. Oh my gosh, I've had a really good idea, but it's happened on occasion. But the reason why I bring all of this up here today is because at the beginning of 2022, I had this epiphany, if you will, where I wanted to share more coaching calls, more behind the scenes of the conversations that I have with you, those of you in this community. And I didn't want to be totally overwhelmed by people saying, oh, you're doing free podcast audits or you're doing free coaching calls. And so what I did is I opened up a very specific amount of spots on my calendar, and I told people in our Facebook group. I didn't even announce this all over Instagram until I think there were, just one spot left. It's when I finally was like, hey, by the way, we're doing this. Come check it out. So if you're thinking about starting some sort of template podcast content like this, I'm just sharing behind the scenes of how I did this and how it worked. But I told our Facebook group members, I said, here's my calendar link to get on the calendar. Pick a spot. I hope you pick a spot, but when they're gone, they're gone. And I plan on doing this again in the future because it was so much fun. So we batched several of these coaching calls back to back, and we're starting to share them with you today. So Stacia was our very first coaching call that we had, and she had so many great questions. I'm not even going to give any away. I cannot wait for you to hear her questions. And I hope that you glean from these interviews that we've done, these coaching calls, really helpful nuggets from people that are in different stages, because you're going to hear from brand new content creators. You're going to hear from people that have previously been blogging and then they switched to podcasting, other people who have done other types of content in the past and they're just now getting into podcasting or creating other types of content, and then people that are ready to move on to the next phase of content creation. They want to add more things in and they just needed help with understanding the strategy behind that. So I hope that you find these calls super, super helpful, because we're kicking them off today with our first interview. So let's get right to it. Welcome to the Profit Podcast, where we teach you how to start, launch, and market your content with confidence. I'm your host, Crystal Profit, and I'm so excited that you're here. Thanks for hanging out with me today, because if you've been trying to figure out the world of content creation, this is the show that will help be your time-saving shortcut. So let's get right to it, shall we? All right, Stacia, I'm so excited to have you here on the podcast. Welcome.
Me too. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so what we're doing is we're doing some coaching calls for community members, and I wanted to just really dive right in to your questions that you have. So the type of content that you're creating is you're really going to focus on a podcast, correct?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Okay, did you have any specific questions that really jump out to you? Do you currently have a podcast? Are you in the process of launching one? Tell me a little bit about your journey.
I have two podcasts at present. I started with the first one. It's called the Chat Break Podcast. And I had all of these ideas just flowing, coming to me, but then to sit behind the mic and to actually speak, I froze. I started in June 2021, and I only have 2 episodes out there. I mean, I have a book filled with so many episode ideas, but they're still in the book. So I need to get from in the book to actually having listed podcast ideas. So I came across when I started to do, because I remember I was in a group and I asked, for podcast guest collaboration. I got almost like 30 or 35 persons interested in coming on the podcast. Again, I froze because I was like, how am I going to ask these questions? I keep listening and trying to learn on how to ask these questions, how to conduct a really great interview, but I just didn't. So I have 35 persons. They're just waiting for me to record them. I just didn't. So I need help to get over that invisible bridge where I need to move the podcast episode ideas from this book to my platform.
Oh, this is so good. And actually, you just transported me back to the beginning of my journey, because I'm like you. I've never had a shortage of ideas. I've always been like, oh, I have an idea for that. I have an idea for this. Like, I could always talk about it. But then when it comes to actually recording it, I get overwhelmed with where to start. That's usually my thing. So tell me a little bit about, like, is that what it is? Is like you have all these ideas and you don't know which order to put them in, or you just don't know like the journey that you want to take a listener on? Like, let's talk a little bit more about that.
Okay, I started off, well, one of the concerns I had was to try to decide between seasons and just the flow of the episodes. And I started to do some research on that. And I was really pulled to the seasons where the benefit of having these seasons, it gives me a break as a busy entrepreneurial mom with 4 boys. It gives me a break to kind of, have life in between. But then what if I ran out of like season themes or ideas for those themes for the season? So that kind of boggles my mind a little bit. So then I said, no, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm just going to flow into the podcast episodes. But then it's almost like the imposter syndrome. He just like shows up. I mean, you're just on the brink of having something great. He just shows up and he's like, nobody's going to want to hear what you're going to have to say. You're just a teacher. Yeah. You're a teacher. Yes, you're building your business. You're teaching other parents just like yourself how to build businesses from the ground up and how to manage both the parent and entrepreneurial life. But nobody's going to want to hear you. And it's like, then you kind of absorb all of that, even though you know you have good stuff. it's still a struggle. The presence is not there, but that voice, that inner voice that says, you're not good enough. It just stops everything. There's a complete screeching of tires and everything. Everything just comes to a complete halt. And then it's almost like you're burdened not to go forward anymore. It's like, okay, but if the inner me knows that this is not going to be good enough, then why bother? Why even start, you know? And I see others and I hear you, Crystal, and I'm listening to you and I follow you and I'm on your lives and stuff. But it's like, I need to get from here to here so that my listeners can have something to listen to, you know?
Being a woman in business comes with its own unique set of challenges, but also so many opportunities. We get ahead by leaning in to what makes us different from business as usual. I'm Samantha Hartley, host of Profitable Joyful Consulting, inviting you to a special 6-episode series exploring the experience of being a woman in business. You want to hear from women consultants who've hit $1 million, who sell 6-figure engagements, or who've broken their own revenue ceilings? Yeah, those are my clients, and they'll be sharing too. Join me for 6 must-listen episodes that tackle key challenges for women consultants. Follow Profitable Joyful Consulting on your favorite podcast app.
Oh, I feel everything that you just said. Like, I felt the emotion of it because I've been there. And I think anybody listening right now, we feel that, like the imposter syndrome that, like, is this even going to be good enough? Or I'm not Amy Porterfield, so why should I even try? Like, I mean, come on. Yes. Like, we all feel that real deeply. Even though I've been doing this for 4 years, I still feel those thoughts. And I have like this emotion behind, is what I'm doing going to help people? But at the end of the day, I think that the only way that you can move past that is to just, and this is going to sound silly, so bear with me for a second. I promise this works. Record yourself, delete it. Record yourself, then delete it. Record yourself and then delete it until you say, Stacia, like, I got this. Like, why? You don't need to delete this anymore. Like that one, that last one, that 4th one, or that 25th one, however many times it takes you, that was so good. Like, that is the one, like, that's my voice, or that's the way I want to show up. This is the example that I want my listeners to hear. And I know it sounds so simple, but sometimes it's that thing that we need to, like, just do it. It's that repetitive nature of, you get out of your head at that point because you're just, and maybe it's like a commitment. You say, okay, I'm going to record this exact same episode. Pick a short topic. So you're not doing this like for hours at a time, but pick like a short topic and just record yourself and give yourself that permission. I think that this is what you need. You just need that permission to delete it if it's terrible. And if you're like most people, like me, you're like, that sounds like an awful lot waste of time. It just sounds like a huge, massive waste of time. I just want to record something and put it out there. But it's in doing that multiple times that it will get those repetitions of, just like, imagine working out or practicing any other kind of hobby. It's going to get you better faster if you can just practice, delete. And if you need to do that, and sometimes you could just do it on your phone, you could do it on your computer, you could just say it out loud. You don't actually have to record yourself. You could just walk around your office. You know, everyone in your house will think you're crazy. Just like when you record a podcast by yourself, they'll think you're crazy anyway. So just get used to that feeling. But does that help? Does that help at all? Do you have any other questions?
I love the fact that, and I love simple. And that's one thing I want to give to my listeners as well as my clients also. Simple. I can't deal with the fluff. No, in searching, when you're doing searching, so that's why you need to come to Crystal Profit all the time. I don't need to have all of these big explanations and these long-winded conversations. Just I need to, like you said, just get it done, keep going, and let's see where we go from there. That's what I needed. I really needed that.
Yeah. And how long are you thinking that your episodes are going to be?
Well, I decided that at first I was afraid even to talk for 30 minutes straight to myself, you know? And then I said, after listening to a couple of your shows, it was like, just talk, when you're finished talking, that's the end, Don't try to overthink it and overreact where that's concerned. So I'm over that, where I said, whatever the topic, how much ever time it takes for me to talk, then that's it. I remembered in one of our Facebook group where you shared with someone, they asked a question about how short should an episode be, and I saw someone's episode that you shared was like 3 minutes. I was like, wow, that is awesome. 3 minutes, I can do 3 minutes. So I'm covered with that. So thank you very much for that.
Yes, exactly. I was going to say, and this is a lot of the times where people have this time constraint of because we listen to amazing episodes, right? You listen to a bunch of podcasts and you're like, oh my gosh, this is so good. And it's 30 minutes. Like, I need to model after that, but just take that permission of exactly what you just said. However long it needs to be is how long this episode's going to be, and then stop it. And sometimes you'll find yourself going off on tangents and telling stories, and you're just like, oh my gosh, because you have ideas in that notebook. I know you do, that you're like, I could talk about this for an hour and a half and I'm going to have to cut myself off. But then there's other things that you're like, I just need to get this out because it's an important message my audience needs to hear. And it's going to be just a tough love talk that takes 5 minutes and then that's it. So you have to just give yourself permission to not have all these boxes around your content. So yeah, that's really awesome. Now, I see that one of your top goals for 2022 is to be consistent. Now, when it comes to consistency, is there anything that kind of really stands out that's going to keep you from being consistent this year?
It started where I was overthinking the episode length. So for 30 minutes, I was like, oh my gosh, can I actually talk for 30 minutes? Can I have 4 30-minute episodes for a month? So I just started to overthink this. But once I have demystified the fact that I don't have to show up for 30 minutes, I could be 5 minutes, I could be 10 minutes, then it was a lot easier to think that, you know what? If I could be 5 or 10 minutes for an episode, then I can actually create these episodes and be consistent. So that's a work in progress right now, but that's a big goal, to show up more so that I could, obviously increase the downloads, have more engagement with my listeners. So I'm putting that to the forefront of my podcast production, where I need to show up to be more consistent for my listeners and myself also.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, I have another piece of advice for you. If you want to take this however you will, because I know I'm like, so it's funny because there are no rules in podcasting. Like, I've said this so many times, but there are like guidelines and there's like examples that we can follow. But for me, I feel like the biggest blessing anybody ever gave me was letting me know that I can do whatever I want with my show. So if you start getting in the flow and you're like, man, like, I think I just need to do 2 episodes a month right now to get started. And then I'm going to get in my groove and then I can always bump it up. Like, this is how a lot of people will get started with multiple episodes right out of the gate. And then they start feeling that burnout and overwhelm rather quickly, which is why most podcasts don't make it past 14 episodes, which that was whenever I first started. Now I think that number is even lower. I think it's like 7 or 8 episodes. Like, it's ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. But I think it's because people overcommit and underestimate how much time and energy it takes whenever you're just getting started. If you're learning how to edit, if you're learning how to record, like, give yourself some grace and allow yourself some of that wiggle room. So if you need to, I would recommend just starting off with 1 or 2 episodes a month to get started. And then you're like, okay, I got this. Like, now I want to rev it up. I want to jump to 4 episodes a month or 3 episodes, like whatever it's going to be consistent for you. So consistency doesn't just mean once a week. It is consistent for whatever's going to work with your time, your personal life, your professional life, like all the schedules mixed in between. So definitely take that into consideration as well.
Most definitely, I will.
Yeah.
I needed to hear that, actually. I needed to hear someone as experienced as you are to tell me it's okay. It's okay to stop trying to overcommit. It's okay to take it into smaller chunks or bite sizes. where it's a lot more manageable. So thank you for that. Thank you very much.
Yes. And I say that not just as, a content coach and a podcast coach, but also as a podcast listener. There are a lot of shows that I consume that only put out 2 episodes a month. And I still love those shows just as much as I love my other ones. Yes, I'm sitting here as a fan of the show saying, I wish they would put out more content. I do. I'm like, come on, like, why do they only put out 2? But at the same time, when an episode does drop, I get that much more excited because I'm like, oh, okay, like this, it's almost like that exclusive feeling, like, oh man, I wish I had this all the time, but I don't, but I'm going to enjoy it while I get it. So imagine that that's how your audience is going to be thinking about your content as well. They're going to be waiting on pins and needles. They're going to say, when's our next episode come out? And then maybe eventually you'll be like, hey, surprise, like I'm coming to you every single week. So if that's the permission you needed, I hope that really sits with you.
I did needed that permission. I did indeed. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. And then one of the other questions that, or one of the questions that I asked is, and we kind of addressed this earlier, is what is your number one concern with your content right now? And you were saying that it's not good enough. So besides the imposter syndrome or, just feeling more comfortable with your voice, is there anything else that kind of comes to the surface when you think about like getting your content out there in front of your audience?
I want my content, because I'm an educator and I understand storytelling as an educator. So I just wanted to have my content. I guess that's another expectation I was trying to put on myself, where I have my content flowing. So even though it may not be, okay, chapter 1 in the beginning or in the middle and the end, I still want that each episode is connected somehow to the next episode, and it just brings you along a journey. That's what I'm seeing in my head. That's what I'm thinking about all the time. But when it comes to just like actually getting it together out there, it's like, can I do this still? Should I do this way? Or should I just, just put it out there? Just let it go, So I struggle with that also.
Yeah. Well, I want to go back to what you were talking about earlier, because you said that you had the ideas for your solo podcast, and then, or maybe it's just for your topics in general, and then you also have interviews. Like, tell me a little bit more about the style. Are you looking to do both?
I'm looking to do both, where I was trying to calculate, let's say 1 interview a month and then 3 solo episodes. That was the initial plan. And again, it was all trying to get it into some kind of order or some kind of sequence that flows, But then when it all started to happen and all these persons were reaching out, can I be on your show? Can I be on your show? And I was like, do you really want to be on my show? Is my show good enough for you to be on? And then I started to doubt myself. And then it was like looking through the book and, this is not good enough anymore. No, I shouldn't use this anymore. And I was like, Crystal, there's so much that goes on in your head when you're starting something new. And I need help. I keep saying I need help to just get from that newness to that first step. And the first step doesn't always mean, well, for me, the first step, it would be, the first step would have been, getting your name, getting yourself on the podcast platform. Yes. So then the next step is like, almost like, okay, yeah, you've moved across from the name. You have your name. You already have it on Anchor and Squadcast and stuff. You need to move on to get those persons in here and get more listeners. So what are you going to do about it? And I just freeze.
Yeah. Again, I feel that, and I'm transported back to the beginning of my journey. And I can tell you that it was really hard for me because I wasn't doing what I'm doing today. Obviously, it was a totally different podcast and everything. But I remember thinking, I want credible people on my show, but I don't know how to prove my credibility. Like, that was a real big mental block for me.
That is also, yeah.
And I think that the only way to really kind of overcome this is to prove to yourself, because that's where that confidence is going to come from. It's not going to be you trying to convince someone else that you're the person, because at the end of the day, like, it's all going to come down to, is this person a good fit or not? Because I can tell you, I've had many interviews over the last few years where I'm like, I felt desperate to have people on my show, but then I realized it was not a good fit for my audience. So I never want anybody to be in that situation where they feel like I just have to interview people for interview's sake. I love the idea of you doing a lot of solo content and then inviting people to come into your podcast as an expert or as someone to share their story, because it leverages you to have more control instead of feeling that desperation. So I love that you're doing both. I would recommend, if you wanted to get going, if you really wanted to get your content ball going, then start creating some of those solo episodes, because what will happen is, instead of saying, like, you're not waiting on the interviews to happen. You can create this solo content and start putting it out there and showing people too. It's like, hey, here's what we talk about on the show, and this is what we've covered. And they can offer up their expertise in whichever place that it falls in your topic. But also it proves to yourself, like, number one, I think that's the most important. It's proving that to yourself, because that's going to build your confidence. It's going to boost this authority. Like, you have the right, girl, like, put your shoulders back. Like, I have the right to be here and share my message. Yes. Yes. But sometimes that's what it takes. It's just doing it and putting it out there. So does that sound like a plan? Does that sound like something that scares you, excites you? Like, what do you feel about that?
Having instead of hearing me say, and I guess that sometimes you need that hand holding. So actually hearing your voice, pass through my ears and it resonating with me is doable. It is indeed doable. You've given me the permission to just, be me on my show. You've given me the permission to show up as I see fit. And you've given me the permission to, okay, I'll choose whoever I want to compliment me. Thank you very much for that.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And if you need any reminder of what it's like to go, that all my episodes are still there at the beginning. They're all awful. And you can go listen to every episode that I've recorded. And I leave those there on purpose. I didn't go back and delete them. I didn't change them. I didn't re-edit them. I didn't do anything, because I want people to see the progression of a journey. You are on a journey, and in 6 months from now and 12 months from now, you will say, oh my gosh, those were my first episodes. I talk so much differently and I'm so much more confident. And like, you'll see the progression, but you have to get started. Like, this is your day one, square one. You are just getting started. And I hope that in 12 months from now, you look back on this journey and say, oh my gosh, I've come so far, but you've just got to get that ball rolling.
Yes, I need to. Thank you very much for that.
Yes. Well, where can everybody listen to your podcast, connect with you, learn more about you, and all the things that you do?
What I'm currently doing, I'm an early childhood educator. However, I'm also a parent entrepreneur coach, where I help busy parent entrepreneurs like myself to balance building their businesses while raising a family. And I consider myself an expert with this because I have 4 boys, I'm still an educator, and I have my businesses, my online businesses. So you can reach out to me at www.staciaarcher-clarke.com. That's my website. And my podcast is the Chat Break Podcast. It's called Balancing Business and Babies, where I help you to, we talk all things parenting, all things entrepreneurship, and helping each other to find a balance. So that's me in a nutshell.
Awesome. And we're going to have links to everything in the show notes. And so you can go connect with Stacia. So thank you so much for being on the show today.
For having me here. It's a pleasure.
Again, just so fun, so much fun. I love these coaching calls, and I cannot wait for you to hear more in the series. We're going to be airing these every other week, and I hope that you are inspired. I hope that you go check out what everybody is creating. So we're going to have everything listed in today's show notes for you to check out Stacia and all the things that she's doing. So go to crystalprofit.com/episode 346 to check that out. But that's all I have for you today. So if this is your first time tuning in, make sure you hit that subscribe or follow button wherever you're listening to this podcast. Take a screenshot and tag me and let me know your number one takeaway from today's episode. But that's all I have for you. So as always, remember, keep it up. We all have to start somewhere. Hey, Profit Podcast listeners. Thanks for sticking around to a little bit after the episode to hear this special message because I want to hear from you. We are starting a new segment called Fan Mail Shoutouts, and I want to hear from you and I want to hear your questions. What do you want to know? What questions have you been dying to ask me? So here's how to make this happen. Go to the app where you're listening to this podcast right now. Go there. I'll wait a second. Okay. Now, once you're there, you're going to see a hyperlink at the top of the episode description that says, send Crystal a text message. And that's all I want you to do. Send me a text. It could be casual, informal. It could be totally anonymous. Or if you want, you can include your name and the name of your podcast or content wherever you are creating, and I will give you a special shout out in an upcoming episode. So again, go to the show notes for where you're listening to this episode right now, and it will say, send Crystal a text message. And I cannot wait to hear from you and give you a shout out in an upcoming segment of Fan Mail Shoutouts.